This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Upgrade your business with Shopify, home of the #1 checkout on the planet. Shop Pay boosts conversions up to 50%, meaning fewer carts going abandoned and more sales going cha-ching. So if you're into growing your business, get a commerce platform that's ready to sell wherever your customers are. Visit shopify.com to upgrade your selling today.
Hello, and welcome to Scare You to Sleep. I'm your host, Shelby Novak, and I'm going to read you a bedtime story. Before we begin, I didn't want this to get buried in the end of the show, and I want to send a huge thanks to Michael Thorson for the incredible care package I received in my P.O. box. The supplements, the vocal spray, which I tried out today, and it works very well. The cookbook, I can't thank you enough for such a thoughtful gift. I was blown away. And I would also like to thank Jim Booth for the adorable caricature. I literally ordered a frame and just hung it up today in my kitchen. She looks down on me as I cook. I'll post a picture on Instagram of it soon. But in the meantime, please go follow him at Team Banana Bunch on Instagram. Your letter also had me dying laughing. Overall, an excellent visit to my P.O. box, which was great because I had made quite the entrance by dropping all 40 Patreon rewards envelopes. As soon as I stepped in the door, they went flying everywhere. They just scattered. It was like a meet cute in a movie, but I didn't meet cute anyone. So red envelopes everywhere. So embarrassing, but the embarrassment quickly waned when I saw what considerate gifts were waiting for me. I've been having a bit of a tough time lately, and you both made me so happy and feel so loved. Okay, enough about me and my presents. I have such an original creature feature for you tonight, my friend. This is from author Some Unholy Obscenity, who was the author of fan favorite episode Archimedes' Backpack. If you haven't heard that, I recommend checking it out. This is I Can Hear the Staircase. Still hear it. I can hear it when I sleep. I can hear it everywhere I go. I am never free from that god-awful sound. Do you know the experience of angel numbers? Essentially the idea that you see the same number everywhere. And due to that, it feels like a sign from the angels pertaining to your situation. That's exactly how it feels. I can always hear the staircase. I avoid stairs like the plague. If there is an elevator option, I will take it. If there isn't, then it can take me upwards of 20 minutes to convince myself to climb them. Without failure, I will hear it. The groan of those carpeted wooden steps sound like a shotgun in my ears. I will never forget it. That's why I agreed to this. You can't help me, Archivist. But maybe you can find it out in the world. Hell, maybe it's still in that cursed apartment. If you find it and have the means to do so, I ask that you kill it. Kill it with extreme prejudice. That thing has no regard for human life and will take yours if you get close enough. I know this firsthand. I met that thing when I was 9 years old. I moved a lot in the first decade of my life. My mother was inconsistent with her jobs, and Dad wasn't in the picture. He died before I could even remember his face. Mom said that he was a good man, but I couldn't tell you. We never made our way out of our home state, but we swapped cities often, upwards of 3 or 4 times a year. It was the early 2000s, and the economy was growing turbulent. Due to this, we struggled in my younger years. I didn't know then, obviously, but when I pieced it all together later, I realized how hard my mom fought for us. At least, for a long time, she did. I also couldn't maintain friendships because of it. I was switching schools almost as often as we were switching apartments. It was years and years of instability. To me, as a child, it just became normalcy. I would find it odd when other kids told me how long they'd lived in their homes before. I figured people were just constantly moving like we were. Tough luck and bad financial decisions had no meaning to me then. It didn't last forever, though. Not long after I turned 9, my mom told me we were going to move again. Except that this time, it was going to be the last time we did so, for a long time. It would be weird getting comfortable somewhere, but I was excited. The apartment complex couldn't get much better. There were a ton of kids my age, and the school I'd be attending was walking distance. We were on the first floor, so the move was easy, yet we had the 2 stories worth of space. There was a bathroom, a living room, and a kitchen downstairs, with 2 bedrooms and a bathroom upstairs. Our neighbors shared a wall with us, so we could hear each other pretty easily, which was a little weird. It wasn't something we noticed often, however. It was one of the most spacious places we'd lived, and we even had a small backyard. The burden that lifted off my mother's shoulders was noticeable immediately. Not having to drive me to school gave her so much time back. On top of that, her job had apparently paid way more based on how she talked about it. It was looking like things were going to get back to normal. During the move, I did notice something that bothered me. When we were moving things up into the 2 bedrooms, the stairs groaned something awful on every step. It felt like listening to a squeaky bike wheel each time we went up and down it. I remember even then it became a horrible earworm wriggling in my canals. It made me shudder each time I had to revisit the staircase, which quickly turned into a problem considering I had to use it at least twice a day. That really was the worst of it. The other parts of our lives were exponentially better. I was in the 4th grade and starting to really perform academically. I didn't care much for my teacher, but she never bothered me directly. It was easy to stay focused and out of her way. Plus, with my grades doing well, she had no reason to get on my case. Felt like smooth sailing when thinking about my previous few years. My next step in life was I was finally allowed to stay home by myself. With my mom having gained so much time back, she was able to go see friends she hadn't seen in a long while. I was happy for her, but much more happy to have TV privileges all night long. She made me my favorite mac and cheese. To this day, I don't know what she did to it, and kissed me on the forehead before leaving. She told me to keep the door locked, and that our neighbor's number was by the home phone, in case there was an emergency. I waved her off and prepared for my night of endless cartoons. I was so excited to experience this. So many kids in my class were already able to stay home by themselves, and I was one of the younger ones in my class. It felt like a huge step forward. I grabbed an egregiously big bowl of mac and cheese and plopped myself on the couch for a night to remember. Of course, I do the same thing now, except it isn't as cute or as happy. I was deep into my binge when I heard it. I didn't recognize it over the sound of the television, but the crawling of my skin told me all I needed to know. That strange creaking from the staircase had sounded. To my knowledge, there was no other way to trigger that sound without stepping on it. I thought this was odd, but it didn't continue, so I tried to ignore it. A few minutes later, I heard it again. This time, I couldn't help but turn the volume down. It was super weird that I was hearing it now. It had definitely made its way into my head, but this was different. It was a perfect replica of what that sounded like. No, it was the sound of someone stepping on the stairs. It had only happened twice, but there was more than enough for me to know something was off. Confused, I stood up from the couch and looked around the corridor at the banister to the upstairs. It was normal. I didn't see anything that had fallen down. But I shook my head thinking, I must have been imagining things, and walked back towards the couch. Before I ever got there, I heard it a third time. At this point, the hair on the back of my neck was sticking up. I hurriedly looked back towards the banister. What I saw is burned into my mind. Rotten yellow fingernails were curling around the banister poles. They were longer than I've ever seen on someone before. The hands they were attached to were elongated and pale as snow. My eyes moved upwards to face whoever was on our stairs. It wasn't human. It couldn't have been. Its face was a mockery of a human face. It looked more like a toddler had tried to make a person out of Play-Doh. The corners of its mouth reached both of its ears and was filled to the brim with razor-sharp teeth, all smiling at me. Both of its eyes were a hypnotic spiral. The irises spun around the inside of its head like a rolled marble. It had greasy black hair that slithered past its lower back and hid most of its disfigured features. The thing was a nightmare that a cartoon would have. I was frozen in terror. I knew I had to call my mom or the neighbors or the police, but I couldn't move. I was stuck, staring at this abomination on the staircase. Of all the scenarios my young mind had played out, this was never one of them. It was incredibly tall, but it was nearly laying sideways in the stance it had lowered itself into. It took another step down the stairs, but its head did not move. As its foot connected on the one lower step, I heard that god-awful noise again, this time punctuated by a monster causing it. I felt my blood turn to ice water as I tried to make myself move. I couldn't do it. I was on the verge of crying and screaming and pissing myself, and I could not move, no matter how hard I tried. It continued to make its way down the staircase. The limbs themselves made little noise, since the creature appeared to be sneaking, despite its head being turned towards me the entire time. I found it hard to tell if it was staring at me since its eyes kept spinning. We were just in a quiet apartment with intermittent noise from the staircase, and my breathing. Panicked breath, creaking. Panicked breath, creaking. Over and over until it reached the bottom. It finally stood at its full height. Its head had to lean against its shoulders as not to scrape along the ceiling. I was looking at a malformed giant. It took slow, cautious steps towards me and hunched over to get into the living room. It lorded over me and craned its neck so it could face my tiny frame. I let my bladder go. I hadn't even noticed that I'd started sobbing until it was back to facing me. The teeth in its head opened in a painful manner. It strained its own jaw to get its mouth open, and blood fell from its gnarled gums onto the floor below. A tongue came from the small gap between its rows of teeth. It scraped against both rows and spilled more blood onto the carpet. The tongue continued to extend to an impossible length and eventually hit the floor itself. It wriggled towards me and wrapped around my ankle. The warm, wet sensation of my ankle being licked knocked me from my stupor. I screamed. The next thing I remember was waking up in a pool of blood. My mom was shrieking for me to wake up, and sirens were blaring outside. My neighbors were standing behind her, near a couple of police officers. I was so frightened and confused. I burst into tears and hugged my mom. For a few minutes, I just wailed. I was a scared child, nowhere near as brave as I told my mom I would be. She took me upstairs to get me cleaned up, and luckily I was uninjured. My neighbors had heard my screaming through the wall and called the police before rushing over to check on me. God bless them for that. They gave the report to the police while my mom washed the blood and piss off of me. She was incredibly confused at how none of the blood seemed to be coming from my body. I told her about the creature, and I watched as she went pale. She asked me to describe it, and so I did. Terror gripped her features. She had stopped mid-scrub of my back and was trembling. She told me to wait a second while she went to talk to the police. I was left in the tub to wonder what I'd said wrong. I knew the creature was scary, but she wasn't there. She didn't understand the half of it. I curled around my legs and wept once more. This was all so much and so scary and confusing. Through all of it, my mind only contributed it to one thing: the staircase. The horrendous sounds it made. A swinging bell that alerted me to the thing's existence. It was several minutes before she came back to me. She took a deep breath and sat on the edge of the tub and looked at me. She then told me that she knew what I was talking about, that she believed my story completely. This was not what I had expected to hear, though a gallon of blood that wasn't mine was pretty incriminating. According to her, that thing was why we kept moving. She had seen it first when I was brought home from the hospital. It had been on the staircase there as well, same as the apartment after that, the one after that, and so on. As far as my mom knew, the thing had been following us since my birth. I asked her what it was, but she just shook her head. She looked so defeated then. As a kid, you think your parents are invincible warriors. Nothing was scarier than watching that facade drop in front of me. My mom, who had given everything to take care of us, was finally run down from the weight of it all. When I think on how much she did in terms of a normal life, then couple that with this monstrosity stalking us, I don't know how the stress didn't kill her. After I was cleaned up, I had to talk to the police officers. A forensic team took what they could of the blood left behind. I gave them my statement, but unlike my mother, they attributed it to hysteria and imagination. The figure, I'd seen them as a monster when they were just an intruder. They couldn't explain the blood that wasn't mine, but that was just a matter of time with the DNA to be tested. They promised that they would catch the bad guy so we could live in peace. I believed them. It was all I could do. Our lives went back to relatively normal. It took me a couple of weeks to get over the fright, but it did pass. The knowledge that this creature had been seen by my mother didn't bring me much comfort, however. If she had known about it for so long, then why hadn't she done anything about it? It made me afraid that nothing could be done about it. She tried to reassure me that it would be okay. Whenever she did so, her smile never reached her eyes. My mom spent a lot of time on the phone after that. Cell phones weren't as common back then, so I saw her on the phone. She always told me it was a work friend or family, but the conversations she had were always strange to me. I overheard her talk about rituals and payments, and eventually, a woman I'd never seen before showed up at our door. I answered the door since my mom was in the bathroom at the time. The woman was very short. I was just about the same height. She was wearing a flower crown and a very intricate floor-length dress. She asked me if my mother was home, and her voice was very dreamlike. She said that she was here to help with our problem. I led her into our living room and waited for my mom. In a couple of minutes, she appeared and greeted the woman eagerly. The woman's name was Iris. She told us that she was a practiced medium and had dealt with all sorts of entities before. Iris reassured us that no matter what it was on our staircase, it could be dealt with once we figured out what it was. She asked my mom a series of questions to get an idea of what this creature could be. After a short while, she decided she was ready to address it. My mom and I sat on the couch, holding hands, while Iris positioned herself at the bottom of the staircase. She was just out of view from us, but we could hear her reciting something. That part I don't remember well. Plus, she was speaking a language that I didn't. I smelled an herbal burning, and my mom explained that it was sage, and it was used to cure bad energy. Iris had apparently brought a lot of tools to help deal with our monster, according to my mom. I just sat patiently with her. She turned on the TV so I could be distracted from what was going on. My eyes glued to Hey Arnold, trying not to think about what was going on around me. That proved to be impossible. Iris's chanting grew louder, and I could hear glass clinking. Whatever tools she had brought with her were very loud. My foot began to tap on its own. I found myself breathing heavier than normal. The sound of the TV was drowning underneath the sheer volume of Iris's voice. My mom squeezed my hand tighter when she noticed. The chanting was deafening. It was freaking me out how loud this strange woman had become. She had spoken so softly when I opened the door. This was such a departure from the image I had of her. This petite woman was belting like an auctioneer. In the middle of all of this, the phone started to ring. The multitude of sounds was making my head start to hurt. My mom kissed me on the top of my head and ran to the phone to answer it. I couldn't make out what she was saying because of all that was happening in the house. But the gist of it was the neighbors were confused by the abrupt yelling. My mom talked them down, saying we had a friend over, but the noise should stop soon. She continued to talk to them and ensure they didn't call the cops on us again. I was getting horribly overstimulated. My leg was restless and my breath was still shaking. It was all building so rapidly, and I could feel a headache forming. But, like a familiar voice in a crowd, one noise struck me that I heard above all the others. The creaking that indicated someone or something was on the staircase. The chanting from the woman stopped at the same time, but my mom was still on the phone. She must not have noticed the sound. I could hear Iris breathing heavy in the way I had been. There was fear on her breath. She started speaking to it.
What is your name, demon?
She attempted to sound resolute, but it failed even to a child's ears. Iris sounded wildly unprepared for the thing my mother and I had seen.
Tell me your name and why you torment this family.
She sounded much more steady this time around. She must have realized her wavering and shifted. My mom finally took notice once she did so. I saw her tell the neighbor to wait a moment and then hang up the phone. The creak of the next step the creature took was deafening. All other sound had faded once it had showed up. It was around the corner and on the second floor, but I could still see it as clearly as when it had attacked me. The image of that thing was a permanent resident in my mind, now that Iris had seen it as well. She knew what it was we were dealing with.
Stay back from me. I have the tools to fight you.
She was shaky again. The third creak came just afterwards, and I could hear her start to panic. Her breath was in rhythm with mine now. My mom came to her side quickly after she'd gotten off the phone. I heard her utter, "Oh God," when she got to Iris. Clinking and rummaging could be heard, but I barely noticed. All I could hear was that fucking staircase. The impending doom walking towards my mother and her medium. I don't know how something that big didn't have thunderous footsteps, but it just made the staircase creak. It didn't make any other fucking noise. Why didn't it make any other sounds? A scream came from them both as that horrible oral assault continued. It was making a move. I could hear it in their panic. Then, I heard the front door open and shut and shouts of apology from Iris. She was crying and laughing hysterically. She had come here a medium and been made a mad woman in under 30 minutes. The window in my living room showed her getting into her car and struggling to put her keys in. "Get back!" My mother's voice cut through everything all of a sudden. I had heard nothing like that tone before. I was almost sure that there was a dire wolf standing at the bottom of our staircase. The staircase that she had commanded to halt. A creak came once more after her words. I was sweating profusely at this point, and I hadn't noticed that my nails had been sinking into my legs. I felt the blood on my fingers before I felt the pain.
Stay the fuck away from my daughter.
A roar from a lioness protecting her pride with agonized ferocity. And there I was, on the couch. That same daughter she screeched like a banshee for. I was unable to move, unable to help, or to even cry out. Noises came from outside that sounded like more people. I heard knocking on our front door and even saw a neighbor spot me from the window. All I could do was look at them, expressionless. They shouted to tell them what was going on, but I may as well have been on a different planet. There were only two things in the world right now. That creature and my mother. A slick-sounding noise came from the bottom of the staircase, and then a soft thud. My mother was breathing heavy and angry. She also did not notice the sounds from outside. Another creak, and then something I hadn't heard before. A low, gravelly voice breathing alongside her. It grew in volume to match her own. Soon both of them were screaming in each other's face from the sound of it. My mother's words had devolved into chaotic buzz. She was now feral and facing a predator down in its eyes. Shouts from outside grew with them, as did their confusion. And then it crescendoed. I heard a creaking from the bottom and the middle of the staircase. They fought and did so loudly. In the heat of it, my anxiety came to a head. I fainted and fell off the couch. When I came to, I was in an ambulance. It was parked just outside of our apartment. What looked like hundreds of people were outside. But it couldn't have been that many. 30 at most. A paramedic was looking at me on a stretcher, with sadness in her eyes. There was something else, too. A lack of understanding that whatever I was about to learn didn't make sense. And it didn't. I don't know how long I cried when they told me my mom had died. I was sent to go live with my grandparents after the fact. It wasn't until I was an adult that I found out that my mom had been torn to shreds by the creature. She never stood a chance. She just did it because she loved me. And in her heart, she had to. My mother fought our entire lives to protect our livelihood. Once she had finally found some semblance of stability, she was killed by an unknown horror. Something that lingers in stairwells and defies nature with its very existence. So, Archivist, I hope that's enough for you. I have not seen it since the day my mother was taken from me. But I can still hear it. I can hear the staircase. Thanks for listening, and thank you to my author, Some Unholy Obscenity. Thank you so much for your continuous contributions. I have several other stories I'd really like to grab from you. Some of them keep getting stolen by Creepy, but that is my fault because I don't read fast enough. But I also love Creepy, so he can have them. It's fine. But if you'd like to have a story of your own considered for the show, you can send it to scareyoutosleep@gmail.com, and please notify or put in the subject line whether it is a fictional story or a true story. Just helps me categorize it a little quicker and easier. And you can also follow the show on social media at scareyoutosleep on all the socials. I'm not going to list them. I'm probably there, and if I'm not, then I'm not. But pick your favorite social media site and try to find me at scareyoutosleep, or you can find me personally at Shelby B. Novak. And if you'd like more of me, you can follow the Bloody Disgusting podcast, where I am on as a regular now. And we've been posting, or not we, I say we, I'm not in charge of the social media at all for that show. I'm just like stolen valor over here. They have been posting some clips from the show. So every once in a while they'll post a little video clip. So you can follow them, or us. I guess it's us now? I don't know. I'm working it out. Be Disgusting Pod, anywhere you get your social media for your podcast. So Instagram, Twitter, Blue Sky, Threads. I think they're everywhere there. And you can see a few clips from the show. Like they just recently posted one from this week's episode, which was a recap of all of our favorite horror movies of 2024. And I tell you in the clip what I'm excited for 2025. And thank you to those of you who have been complimenting my decor. I really appreciate it. It makes me so happy. So thank you for that, because you can see it behind me when I'm in the little clips. So what else? Oh, for ad-free episodes, you can go to patreon.com/scareyoutosleep. You can also get bonus episodes there, which there will be more of. I am so sorry. Again, I have been having a little bit of a tough time. You know, sometimes our brains aren't very nice to us. And that's been happening. I've been having issues with my emergency surgery from back in October and my insurance. Oh, Luigi. That's all I'll say about that. Anyway, they're like, yeah, you could have died, but I mean, that doesn't mean we have to pay for it, right? You just pay us every month. Anyway, I'm not going to go on about it. Don't worry about it. It's going to be fine. It'll all be fine. Why? Because I just know it will. It'll be fine. So thank you again to Jim Booth and to Michael Thorson for those incredible gifts. Again, you don't have to send me gifts. I was not expecting anything. I don't check my P.O. box that often, and I just happened to be going because I needed to drop off all my Patreon letters and grab some more stamps. And I was like, hey, I should just go ahead and check the P.O. box. I mean, I was there. I always do when I'm there. And I opened it, and I could not believe how great all of that was. I hope you enjoyed some of the monster sound effects this week, by the way, because they were me, and I drooled all over myself to get them. So don't picture that. It's horrific. I probably looked absolutely insane. But anyway, it was very drooly. I wanted to talked about the tongue. Some Unholy Obscenity, our author, talked about like the tongue a lot. I was trying to get like real tongue-like sounds, and that ended in me drooling all over myself. I also, I set my hair on fire this week. God. Wow. Anyway, I did. I set my hair on fire this week. It was dumb. It was so dumb. I'll tell you what happened. I was cooking. I was going to blanch some green beans, and I put water in the pan because I was just going to use not a saucepan, like a frying pan, just because it boils the water faster, whatever. So I did that, and for some reason I got like a whiff of like chlorine bleach, and I was afraid every once in a while, sometimes there's like, I don't know, I thought it might be like coming from my tap water, and so I was like, oh no, is there like bleach in the water? Did something happen? What's going on? So I had put it on, and I didn't smell it until I had like set it on the stove and turned on my burner, which I have. One of my burners is one of those like boil burners, so it goes extra high to like boil stuff faster. And it had the flame is crazy on this. It's wild. And I know better. I've lived here long enough now. I know better. I also always cook with my hair up. I never cook with my hair down. It feels gross. I think it kind of is gross. It's like a health and safety thing that I learned back in my working around food days. But for some reason, to that night, oh, you know what? It was the night I recorded for the Bloody Disgusting podcast. So I'd curled my hair, and my hair was cute. And so I just didn't think about it, and my hair was still down after the podcast because we record in the evenings for that. And so it was like dinner time for me, and after we were done, and I still had my hair down, and I leaned over to smell the water because I was like, oh no, I hope that smell's not coming from the water, because I was like, well, maybe it's coming from like a cleaning product from my sink that I got, I lean over, and whoosh. I also had hairspray in my hair because I had done my hair for the Bloody Disgusting podcast. I had curled it and put hairspray in it. Just whoosh. It's fine. It wasn't too much. It wasn't too much hair. I just have like extra layers on the right side of my head, and it definitely changed the texture of some of my hair. So that's fun. great. It was great. It was so dumb. It was so dumb. Anyway. Okay, I also, if you want to know what I baked this week, I baked a loaf of bread. It's okay. I'm kind of in one of those phases where food doesn't taste great. You know how it goes when you get the SADs. It's fine. It's a phase. I shouldn't even talk about it on the podcast. I'm putting that out there in the universe, and I don't mean to, because it's going to be fine. Brain's going to start fucking working again the way it's supposed to, and I'm not going to set my hair on fire this week. I'm not going to drop a bunch of envelopes at the grocery store, at the post office. It's going to be fine. And, it's fine. I keep saying it's fine. If I tell you, maybe I'll convince you, and then maybe I'll convince me. Anyway, again, seriously, don't worry about me. You don't have to write me a bunch of emails and stuff and worry about me. It's fine. It's fine. I'm going to go. Because this is just off the rails. So yeah, I baked bread. I set my hair on fire. And I got some beautiful gifts in the mail. Seriously, the time and effort it took to draw that caricature, it's amazing. The letter's beautiful. I don't know if he wanted me to post that, so I don't know if I'll post that. It's in the frame with the picture, so I'd have to take apart the frame. And Michael Thorson, the supplements and the vocal spray and so much. I was overwhelmed. I was oh my God, this is so much. With a personalized little message for each thing. The kindness. I sent a video of it all to my best friend. I texted my parents about it. I was just look at all this beautiful stuff. I just all this very, again, just really thoughtful. You really it was so me in that moment. It wasn't just I don't know, it was very thoughtful. Thank you so much. I'm just saying the same things over and over again. I'm fine, and it was thoughtful. I think you all get the point now. I'm going to go. I hope you all have an excellent week. Next week should probably be a true stories episode, is what I'm leaning towards at the moment, because we haven't done one actually since November. I try to do one once a month, but I did not do one in December. So we're going to do a true stories episode. So, that gives you about a little less than a week to send in your true stories if you have one that you've been sitting on, or maybe you had an experience during the Christmas season. I don't know. And again, it doesn't have to be just ghost stories. It can be just, a kind of, not to steal the term from one of my closest pod friends' show, but a let's not meet type story. It can be UFOs. It can be ghosts. It can be something so unexplained you don't even know how to categorize it. It can always be time slips. Always time slips. You can always write to me about time slips and glitches in the Matrix. Oh, those are my favorite. Okay, I'm gonna go. I hope you have an excellent week. Go get some sleep. Sweet dreams.